use headphones for best experience. Thanks for your fantastic support. First, let me show you that there are more new content here on audio streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music and other platforms. So if you want to listen to my content audio only, check out these platforms and search for ASMRctica, ASMR, and you will find a lot of new albums here. And the next rune will be the one called Oss. And this one I will write in a couple of variations. This is the elder Futhark version. Then the shape developed a bit. Maybe I can use another tool and draw some smaller runes here. So yeah, the younger Futhark version is you almost most occasions you see this one slanted to the right, 2 strokes, parallel strokes, and 1 vertical. But all combinations can be seen on different items and rune stones, slanted to to the left, only one side, the other side slanted to the right, both sides to the left, and both sides to the right, only down to the right, only down to the left, up to the left, up to the right. Okay, this one I think I did a copy of here. So there were a lot of variation before it somehow became this one, I think. Or this one for the long branch version, seen more in Denmark than in Sweden. This one in the short branch version, seen more in Sweden. Also this one I think you could see during the period where you were supposed to see the younger Futhark. This elder Futhark version lived on as well. And the pronunciation changed as well. From an ah or ah sound, nasal ah. The nasal vowels were very common in Old Norse language initially. Ah, but then the nasal versions of the vowels were lost, so then it became more of an O sound. From A, ah to O. And also that's why the Anglo-Saxon Futhark is actually called Futhark, not Futhark. O, O. Then this had turned into an O sound. And this change in sound value was completed in mid 11th century, I think. Something like that. But let's read the Icelandic rune poem for the Oss. Oss algingátur och Ásgarðs Geofur och Valhallar Vísi. Oss means a god, a heathen god, pagan god, living in Asgard, one of the Old Norse gods, the pantheon there. So an Aesir god is a progenitor, or an age-gauter. A gauter can be seen on runestones. I think the runestone video I made 1 year ago, I think the word gauter was there, and it was not super clear what it meant. But maybe it has to do with the Geats living in Götaland in southern Sweden during Vendel time, Vendel and migration period, Vendel period, in the first millennium, before Sweden was united. So the Swedes and the Geats were unified into one kingdom. Or Or it could be the people in Gotland, or other Goths, maybe from Eastern Europe. But in this case, Algengautur, it could be an aged Gautur, mythical ancestor or national god in the origin myths of the Geats. So Algin, I guess, is aged somehow. Och Ausgards Geofu. Ausgard is Asgård, the realm for the gods, the Old Norse gods, where they lived. Gård is like property, farm, house. Geofur resemble chief a little bit. Chief, chef in Swedish, boss. Chief or prince, I've seen it translated. Valhallar Visi, the leader of Valhalla. Valhalla is Odin's realm, or the place where people who died in battle would end up. So like a place you could come to after death if you were lucky and had died in battle instead of dying by old age. So the leader Visi of Valhalla. The R after Valhalla means, I think, that it's in genitive. Visi as leader. Maybe it has to do with wise, vis in Swedish. It doesn't have the meaning leader now in Swedish, I don't think in English either, but maybe it comes from that, the wisest of those. The wisest one was the leader. At least in Valhalla, where Odin was the wisest and was the leader. So I'll read the translation once again. A heathen god is an aged Gautur and Asgard's chief. And then the Norwegian version of the poem goes like this. Oss fleistra ferda for en skalper sverda. And here it has been interpreted as estuary, for where a river meets the ocean. Estuary is for most journeys, is where most journeys will end up, or maybe something like that. The way for the most journeys. But a scabbard is the swords. So the second part, second line of the Norwegian poems are don't necessarily have something to do with the first line. Just ferda and sverda, here it's a rhyme. So for scabbard is the swords, but a scabbard is the swords. Skalper, it's scabbard, where you have the sword when you're not using it. And sverda is sword, you can hear it resembles the English word and the Swedish svärd. So estuary is for most journeys. I forgot to mention fleistra färda. Färda in Swedish is I can hear it has to do with färd, journey. Färd, färda. Fleistra, also can still hear in Swedish. Flesta, most of. So estuary is for most journeys, but a scabbard is the words. Next rune is Reið. The runes were mostly carved, and initially they were carved in wood most often, I think. There are theories about that, so that's why they have no like rounded shapes, even though the shapes, yeah, here it was a bit rounded, but it's quite difficult to complete round shapes if you carve in wood because of the fibers of the wood. So most of the runes have developed into very sharp corners and straight lines. Yeah, you could, before the age of the rune stones, it's believed that they were mostly used on small wood pieces, perhaps, and then like you had magic spells around them. You had your blood in them to give something from you, and you then wrote some runes that meant something magic, like a formula for something that you wanted to happen, or give you luck in some way. And then after it had been, you have had your blood in it and everything, you would destroy it in a fire. So there aren't many, if this is the truth, there aren't many evidence. Maybe it's the reason why there aren't many evidence of the Elder Futhark, things written in the Elder Futhark from like 400s, 500s, because we know the Elder Futhark writing system did exist by this time. The oldest evidence is from like 100s or 200s AD, but it's very, very few evidence. So one theory is that most of them were carved in woods and destroyed after they had been used. So there were a lot of magic around this, and it was not like primarily a writing system in the beginning. But let's read the Icelandic rune poem for Reið. Reið sitjandi sæla och snodig färd och jors erfiði. Reid means riding. You can hear that. Rida in Swedish. Sitjandi is sitting. You can also hear. Sittande in Swedish. Säla is something joyful, happiness, bliss. Sel was an Old Norse word meaning happy fortunate. But in Icelandic, still in Icelandic, sæla means this, happiness, bliss. There's an old word in Swedish, not used anymore, but you can see it in old texts. Säll. That must be this word. Joyful, happy. For example, the first historically known king of Sweden, regent of Sweden, was Erik Segersäll. Erik the Victorious in the late 900s. So Segersäll, victory, happy. Säll means happy. Seger means victory. Snodig is speedy. I'm not sure if it has to do with the Swedish word snow. We can say snow if we want someone to hurry up. Snow can mean a lot of different things. It can also be twist something. Or pick something, like rob something. Like if you're a thief and you take something that doesn't belong to you, then you snow. So it can mean a lot of things, but I think also it has to do with something speedy when you use it. Snow dig på. Hurry up. So maybe that's a remain of this Old Norse word, snodig. In Icelandic, modern Icelandic, I think snowa means more twist, like the Swedish, also the Swedish meaning. Färd is trip, journey. Färd, Swedish. Jors. Jor is a poetic old name for a horse, or a stallion in Icelandic. And maybe it derives from the old word evar, evar, or something like that. Proto-Germanic word for horse, and that also related to equus, the Latin word for a horse. That could also be related to hippos, Greek word. But I'm not completely sure if they are related. But anyway, jor is some type of old word for horse. It's not super far away from the word horse itself. You have the O, you have the R. Erfidi means toil, hard work, labor. I can't see any connection to a Swedish word there. So, riding is sitting joyful and speedy trip or journey. And the horses toil. And the Norwegian poem goes like this. Reid kveða rossum væsta, regin sló sverdet besta. Once again, I'm not sure they are connected to each other. It's just two lines here. First it says riding. Kveða, they say, an old word for saying something, or especially in the Old Norse literature, sometimes they're like narrative stops, and it says, and then Thor kvad. Kvad is past verb form for kväda. And that's an old Swedish word for tell something, like tell a story or perform maybe a poem. Ett kväde is some kind of poem, I guess, but it's very old-fashioned word in Swedish. So it has to do with someone says this. Rossum veista. Veista means worst. You can hear that a bit. Veista. In Swedish, worst is värst. Even a bit more close to veista. So rossum is a horse, also in Icelandic. Häst is another word. There are many words for horses in Icelandic. Maybe this is also mostly used in poetic ways. Regin. There are stories about Regin in the old Icelandic sagas. He was a smith. He forged a very powerful sword for a hero called Sigurd. So here it says that Regin hammered out or forged the sword the best sword. Regin is a name. Slow. In Swedish you can say slog. It's a punch or hit, but you can also use the same verb for forging a sword, for example, when a smith creates iron items. Hammered out. Svärdet, the sword. Svärdet in Swedish, modern Swedish. Bästa. It's actually called bästa in Swedish too. The best. So, riding, they say, is for horses worst. Regin hammered out the best sword. Next rune is Kaun. This is the younger Futhark version. Younger Futhark used from around 800 to 1100s. The elder Futhark had a version that looked a bit different. Like this. So this one didn't have this vertical line as all the other runes had. There were some in the elder Futhark that didn't have those, and they were dropped and not they were not part of the continued in the younger Futhark, or they were changed somehow. So in this case it has like, yeah, you can imagine they have added this straight line, vertical line that goes from the top to the bottom of the row. The runes on rune stones, for example, you always had these lines, parallel lines, and this stroke was always all the way to the top, to the line at the top, and to the line separating line at the bottom and top. but yeah, no, yeah, they are not super similar, but it's two versions. And the Icelandic rune poem for Kaun goes like this. Kaun barna böl och bardaga för och hold foa hus. So a Kaun was actually a very specific condition. It was a sore or a boil or an ulcer. Ulcerous sore. Like something on your skin that really was difficult and something you maybe didn't want there and that hurt. And barna is children, barn. In Swedish it's barn as well. Böl is illness or fatal disease. In Old Norse, bale is actually archaic English for evil, harm, woe, sorrow, misfortune, disaster. This could mean bold, böl. Bardaga, a battle. In Faroese language, I found bardagi. It means battle, conflict, war, brawl. So, a battle. Journey means... Oh, sorry. Far means journey. To fara in Swedish, somewhere. Att fara is to go somewhere, travel somewhere. So I think this can be related to that word. I'm relating as often as I can to Swedish, since that's the language I know the best. So probably there are you can trace a lot of these words to modern Norwegian, Danish, Faroese, Icelandic, also a lot in English language, and especially Old English language. But as soon as I find something from the Swedish language, I will bring that up first, because it's easier for me. But it doesn't mean that it can't be found in any other languages. Holdfoa. What's that? I found holdfoi in Icelandic. It means sore and wound. Hus is house. Hus in Icelandic, hus in Swedish. So the house of a wound. So we have an ulcerous sore is a children's illness or disease, and a battle journey, and the house of a wound or sore. I'm not sure how to interpret the battle journey, but yeah. The Norwegian version of a rune poem for Kaun goes like this. Kaun barna bölvan. Böl Jörvernanfölvan. Or Jörvernanfölvan. So the sore, this ulcerous sore, is for children disfiguring. Bölvan. I've seen a translation saying that bölvan means spoiling the appearance of something. I'm not sure why, or I can't see any connection to Swedish language, but that's what I've read. Böl again is bale, misfortune, adversity. Jörver makes, gör in Swedish. It's make, very common verb. Nan. Here I found an Old Norse word, nein, a corpse-like one. Na means near, nas means corpse, ein means one, so maybe some combination of near corpse, one who is near a corpse. So these three letters is translated as corpse-like one. Fölvan I found in Icelandic fölvi, a pale color. I haven't seen it in any other language, and not in Swedish. So a sore is the disfiguring of children. Adversity makes a corpse-like one pale. I'm not sure if it has to be this. To me it sounds a bit complicated with this corpse-like one. None, also I'm thinking about någon, anyone, someone, but I'm not sure, it's just a guess. It could make sense as well, with adversity makes someone pale. But probably it has to do with the corpse gets pale. The next rune, or maybe we can take a look at the first 6 here. F, U, Th, O, R, K. Or F, U, Th, A, R, K in an older pronunciation, in the Ender Futhark. And you can see that the F, Fe rune could have been picked from maybe this one, the F letter in the old Italic script, but also the A or the A, Oss, could come from here. It has been suggested it comes from this one. Not exactly, but somehow maybe an interpretation of this one. The A, because the sound are more, it's more close to that sound. Ah sound. O, not super clear if it's inspired by any of these actually. If not by this one, the O in Old Italic script, turned upside down, modified a bit. This represents both the thorn and the th, when it's voiced version, the more close to a D letter, And then actually I think it's a good guess to suggest that it's from this one, the D, D, and the old Italic, and this one maybe from A, Aleph, and R. Here is the letter R, Rå. It wasn't very long after 8th century BC that actually it started to grow a new stroke here. So we had quite early, maybe the 500s or 600s BC, I'm not exactly sure when, but at least before the first evidence of a Futhark has been found, there were versions when this R looked more like a modern R, so this one is from the Latin R actually, but more not so round shapes. And this one could be a guess that it's from the K. It's quite similar, even though it has only one of these two smaller strokes, and this one has instead those two. It can also be the C letter, because this is from 750 BC and not long after this one, a couple of maybe 100 years later or so, the C had developed more into modern C actually in later appearances of old Italic script. So then it's more like this, but rounder shape in Italy and more sharp turns in the Futhark. Next is a rune from the older Futhark, that didn't make it to the younger Futhark. There were actually 7 or 8 runes that were picked out from this writing system around 800 AD, because the sounds that they represented were not used in Norse or the Old Norse language any longer. It was a big change in vowel system, for example. Also, they made it more simple, everything. The runes you can see that the evolution is to go to more simple, easy to write shapes, always with one vertical stroke and something more, not too much, as little as possible added to that stroke, and also one rune could represent more than one sound, up to 3 or 4 sounds actually. So this rune represented the G sound, letter G, in the elder Futhark, and we don't know the name of it because it's not in the Icelandic or Norwegian rune poem. It's not mentioned there since it's not in the younger Futhark, and those only include the younger Futhark runes. So the name is not clear, but there is another rune poem, the Anglo-Saxon rune poem, that is written down even earlier than the Icelandic and the Norwegian. It was written down in the 9th century. A 9th century manuscript did exist. It was destroyed in the 1700s, but fortunately someone copied it, wrote it down, everything by hand in early 1700s. So we can see how the poem was in Old English, because here it was not exactly the elder Futhark runes in this poem, it was the Anglo-Saxon runes that had been used in England, I guess, during the first millennium AD. So it was, they had added a couple of more runes, so there were a total of 29 or 30 runes in the Anglo-Saxon Futhark. But that's the only evidence that we have for tracing the meaning and name of those elder Futhark runes. And then it was called Geofu in Old English, that means gift. So yeah, it should have a G sound. The runes are agrophonic, I think. They start with a letter that the same sound as they represent. So Kaun stands for the K, Reið stands for R, and Geofu would stand for G sound. And in younger Futhark it was not used anymore, so G sound was represented by the K rune as well. So this could stand for both K and the voiced version G. Now let me read the Anglo-Saxon rune poem. Geofu gomena bythgleng and herenis vrathu and vyrthskype and vreisna kebam ar and eitvist the byth othraleas. I have no idea how to pronounce it actually, but when I looked this up, I found a translation that was quite like word by word accurate, and also I found some web pages where I could look up some Old English, like a dictionary. You could look up some words. Actually, a lot of this makes sense to me as a Swedish speaker speaking Swedish language. I can put links both to the translation I found made by Aron Hostetter, professor in Old English in Camden, and the dictionary tool I used. But then it means something like gifts are an honor and praise of men. Geofu, gåva, in Swedish, gift in English. Gomena is men. Goma is a man. Old English word. You can hear it in Swedish in an old word. If I would say just gum or gumma, I would not interpret it as the word for a man. But there's the word brudgum, that means bridegroom. So there we have brud is bride and gum is groom. So there we have it. So gomma is an old word for a man in Old Norse. So byth must mean are, because it's very many times byth is mentioned here. Gläng is honor or ornament. Herenys is praise, praising together. So gifts are honor and praise for gomena men. Vrathu is help. Virthskype is distinction. Vrechna, I'm not sure how to pronounce C. Vrechna, maybe, the sh sound. Because Vrechna means wretch, villain, or wretch in modern English. Gewam is every. A twist is a substance, existence, being. A twist. A twist. I'm not sure. The is those. Othra. That's other. You can see it. Maybe it was pronounced odra with the voiced version of Thorn. Odra, other. Leas, that's free from, without. So, gifts are an honor and praise of men. A help or support and distinction, and to every wretch mercy and meat to those who are free from other possessions. I don't really get the mercy and meat where those words are, but to those who are free from other possessions. The odraleas, free from other possessions. Maybe odra is like other possessions, I'm not sure. Those who lacks other things, or who are without other things, other possessions.